Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Zach here with secretsoflongevity.com. I was just having an interaction on Twitter with Leo Babauta of zenhabits.com, and we were having a disagreement about the effect that soy has on our health, particularly in the long term. And he just wrote an article which definitely you should check out below, and in it actually starts off with sort of a response or sort of put down to the main groups of people that are anti-soy. So he, in one big sort of slew, he lumps Gary Taubes, Michael Pollan, the whole primal paleo community, and then the WAPFers, or Weston A. Price Foundationers. Just kind of throw some comments out there like, these people advocate high saturated fat diets, and basically there's this sort of egotistical tone of, you know, there's these certain aspects of things they recommend, and you know, because of that they're discredited and everything they have to say is absolute BS anyways, so we're not going to pay any attention to them. That immediately shows to me that this person has not gone into depth to actually research the effects of saturated fat on health and looked at the myths surrounding that. Probably hasn't read Gary Taubes' book, which is probably the best book on the topic of the general sort of diet heart hypothesis and the lipid hypothesis, which totally destroys any semblance that saturated fat and cholesterol can have an effect of increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease. Of course, that's not the topic of the video today, so I'm not going to get into that, but there's many lifestyle factors that need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at any study and any, especially epidemiology, where it's correlative and doesn't actually give you real conclusions. They're not controlled in that sense. So definitely look into those groups more if you want to sort of get some truth around that. I'll be putting some videos out in the near future on those topics to clear up the confusion about that. So with Leo's stance on soy, he lists a lot of different scientific articles, and yes, there's a lot of science supporting soy. That's why a lot of us who have gone away from soy at one point were consuming it in either moderate or high amounts, and either we had some personal experience with it not being good for our health, or we came across information and we stopped using it. Now, one of the comments I got from Leo was that we can't take just personal experience as evidence. Of course, I'm not suggesting it's evidence, but it is experience. There's a difference between personal experience and science. There's a difference between a scientific study and anthropological evidence of what we have done in the past. And then there's also what we see occurring around other people's. And that's sort of the four things I often tell people to take into consideration with any lifestyle factor, especially when it comes to diet. And we can't just look at any one thing exclusively and disregard the others. And even when there's opposition between two things, that's when we have to look at it more carefully. Because when there's opposition between either our own experience and science, or our own experience and sort of the anthropological evidence, or a combination of all three, or all four, and I'll list those off again. It's anthropological, so what our ancestors have done in the past, whether it's 1,000 years ago or 1 million years ago, what the science is showing us in the epidemiological studies, in the controlled laboratory experiments, what our own personal experience is, if something's working or not. That really basically comes down to that. If something's really doing you harm, which a lot of people, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence which has its own weight in its own way, that people get negative effects from consuming soy. And then the last but not least is seeing the effects in others. So you might see someone vehemently promoting something, but you notice something about them that doesn't look quite healthy. Of course, that is observational and is not the most conclusive either, but that can give you a rough idea about certain things. For instance, this group of people advocating this diet all have this one characteristic going on, and you just don't feel like you want to be a part of that. So I want to get into a bit of simple biochemistry first that I don't believe most people understand. Perhaps Lou didn't understand this, perhaps he does. Phytoestrogen is a plant compound, a chemical that has an effect on the body, and we need certain amounts of these, and they have certain benefits in our body. I, for a long time, have advocated the reduction of phytoestrogens in the diet because we are constantly told to consume phytoestrogens because there's this beneficial aspect of them that has been found. However, when we get told to consume soy, flax, green tea, red wine, beans, grains, and all these other foods that are high in phytoestrogens, which on their own have shown benefits on people on a standard diet, eating a variety of more junk type foods that are low in phytoestrogens, when they get those few amounts of phytoestrogens, which in small amounts do have benefits, they're going to show improved symptoms. But when someone who's really keen on health and is really up to date on all this information hears about all these things, incorporates all of them at once into their lifestyle, they're throwing the effect of the estrogens in their body way out of whack. So a phytoestrogen is not the same as your body's estrogen, but it still binds to an estrogen receptor. In some cases it's more potent than an estrogen. The estrogens your own body makes, in some cases it's less potent. Either way, it's still having an effect on the estrogen receptor, and it's stimulating those things in your body that estrogen stimulates. So this is simple biochemistry. We don't need a study to understand this. Yes, the studies on showing phytoestrogen's influence on cancer or something do have relevance, but again, when we're talking about those of us who are in the health field who are really up on our science and health information, we take the best of the best. We think we're doing the best thing possible, but we could be overloading our system with all of these high estrogen containing foods. So the other thing Leo dismisses is the anthropological evidence. So we have simply not used soy for a long period of time. The ancient Chinese used it at first to rotate in their crops, to put nitrogen back in the soil, but they didn't consume it in between, or if they did, it was fermented and they consumed soy sauce or other fermented soy products. And eventually, over time, people did start consuming it in its whole state, unfermented, and problems definitely started coming from that. However, we do see evidence in the literature of the ancient cultures that they considered it toxic. So this right there, personally, I don't do anything that our ancestors didn't do when it comes to food in such a blatant way. Yes, I prepare my food differently. We have tools that we use that our ancestors didn't have. However, when it comes to the macronutrients and the major foods we're eating, just taking some random food that has studies on it and that has a very heavy hand and being connected with some very big industries that have put soy into every facet of the nutritional world, from junk food to oils you put on your food to anything you can think of, whether it's coffee milk replacement or ice cream, to anything, you name it. There's a product out there that will have soy in it. So when you think of the fact that this is probably one of the biggest food industries, it's bigger than the meat and dairy industry, that's for certain, you have to start second-guessing every study you come across. Yes, there is an overwhelming amount of research showing that soy is beneficial, but to what lengths does such a large industry go to promote their propaganda? Well, like any other industry, and yes, the meat and dairy industry does it too, they are going to push and alter the science. We see it in the pharmaceutical industries. Every once in a while you get to hear those stories online about the people that find some of the thrown out research because it didn't quite meet what the result that the industry was hoping to get from it. So while I don't have the specific evidence to point to every single study and say, you know, that one was promoted by that soy company, that one's connected with that place, you just have to take that into consideration when you're looking at the overwhelming amount of research. Consider that grants do come from somewhere, whether it's a government agency or a commercial agency. So the overwhelming tone of Leo's article is that, you know, he's putting the pole down, this is it, we know the truth. Yes, at the end he did say, I'm open to hearing people's responses, and this is my response. But personally, whenever I feel anyone has put that out there in the sense of, this is the ultimate truth, this is the way things are, then you start to have to think, why are they trying to draw this conclusion when actually the evidence does show that it's still quite controversial, and there is still a lot of debate going on. When it comes to peer-reviewed studies, the problem that can happen there is that peer review is actually just, do you still fit in with the status quo of the science journals? So despite that being said, here are some studies that actually show the negative effects of soy, which at first I sent one to Leo and kind of dismissed it, saying, and he actually did link to it in his article, but this is just one study, doesn't have the absolute conclusion, but it was done by Harvard, and it did pretty much show that testosterone is lowered with soy consumption. So I have a link below for that study, and the people responsible for that study had sort of on-the-fence remarks themselves about the results, because they were surprised because it was sort of against the mainstream soy conglomerate, and that is kind of reflective of the common response when something is out of the norm a little bit, or at least the mainstream norm. And you have to be that way as a scientist, otherwise you're going to get vilified for being outside of that box, peer review box, and that's most unfortunate because it, in some cases, doesn't allow for the science to keep pushing in those areas, because when something shows up that's different, you have to have completely no emotion, let go of the bias, and the science should direct all its attention on that area and study it more, as opposed to saying, oh, this is just something that, it's outside of the norm, we're going to completely ignore it. The next link below is to the occurrence of the filing of a lawsuit against the Illinois State Correctional Facility, and the inmates there suffered at the hands of changes to their diet where they pretty much eliminated all meat that they were consuming and switched it over to soy-based products. Basically, in I think pretty much all prison diets, they're going to be consuming some soy if they're consuming the meat, because it's going to be cut with that. The same with McDonald's, same with any fast food place, and that's to cut costs, unfortunately, that they do that. But in this specific prison, they completely cut all meat and replaced it with soy dogs, soy patties, soy everything, soy sausages, and even started to put it into the baked goods, replacing wheat, which is a little bit more expensive than soy. So again, it's trying to cut costs by harming people, because there's this false information out there, and many hundreds of inmates suffered as a consequence. And these 9 inmates, which are actually filing the lawsuit, were actually reprimanded and punished at the hands of the security guards at the prison for doing this, even though they have every legal right to do so. Basically, they had sort of the worst of the cases of problems that came up for them, but basically out of hundreds of prisoners, they had gastrointestinal problems, and that's obvious if you're going to be consuming that many enzyme inhibitors, phytic acid, and all these other problems that are connected with soy. Then they had heart issues like palpitations and other things. And then most notably are the people that had hypothyroid already, or didn't have it but developed it, and those who had hypothyroid and special diets that didn't have the soy in it, because they had that problem, were no longer given the option to have that special diet, and they simply had to just choose to not eat anything and starve if they wanted to not consume the soy, because it would exacerbate their problems. So yes, these aren't peer-reviewed journals, but it is extremely ignorant of any scientist, civilian, or anyone that has any say in public health to disregard this, or with some high-mighty claim that, oh, it's not a peer-reviewed study, so we can't accept this as fact. It's happening. There's no getting around it that soy causes these problems in these people, and I hope them the best for the developments in their lawsuit, and that they actually get either some change happening in the prisons, the awareness that is brought to that issue from that, or they get some sort of monetary reimbursement for their health problems to deal with that when they get out of prison. This next study linked below clearly shows also that estradiol levels were significantly increased with soy consumption, and that is not a good thing. Estradiol is probably the most carcinogenic activating hormone of the estrogens, rather, and this is something we don't want to boost. This is something I talk with people a lot about lowering through various herbal and lifestyle regimens to bring those estrogen levels down, to improve testosterone levels, and basically improve health overall. It did also lower the androgen receptor amounts on biopsies taken from the prostate of the men that were involved in the study. And that's great if you have prostate cancer or you're older and you're wanting to prevent prostate cancer. But there's, first of all, a number of factors that go into the development of any cancer, and we can easily prevent these things with a whole host of lifestyle habits. So we don't have to rely on one miracle superfood that people are promoting if it has negative side effects. And second of all, you don't need to be doing this if you're young, athletic, and you're wanting to preserve your androgen levels, because it's quite clear that soy lowers them. The next study below is one that clearly also shows that tofu, specifically the intake of that, is associated with higher risk of memory problems, so dementia, as one ages. This is a big one considering the booming rates of memory problems in North America, in the world in general, in developing nations. And we don't want to exacerbate this, definitely. And soy, which is often being consumed by people as they're getting up there in their years, because they suddenly think they're going to start taking care of their health, and they're reading sort of the clips in the newspaper, the snippets about what's healthy, and again it's probably listing all these phytoestrogenic foods, and they're just going to be sadly mistaken when they get to that point and start having all these health challenges associated with it. Or perhaps they think they staved off some problems, but really they just sped up their mortality in that sense. Hey, we'll get back to the main topic of this video in just one moment. I wanted to let you know, however, that if you're really enjoying this video, or perhaps you're a regular subscriber, and you'd like to see me continue making regular postings on this channel, Secrets of Longevity, or perhaps even increase the frequency of these postings, of these well-researched videos, and even the articles on my site, I would really appreciate any contribution you're able to make to support me through any of the affiliate links listed below. There's a menu bar that you simply click and it pops down. If you're watching this on another platform other than YouTube, you can double-click this video and it'll take you to YouTube, where you can then click this bar that will pop down to give you these links. So like I mentioned, there's affiliate links. These are all companies I highly recommend and purchase for myself, and I get a percentage of anything that you purchase through these links, and that obviously would support me. And then there's also a link to a donation page on my site where you can make a PayPal donation, and you can also set up a phone consultation if that's something you're interested in doing. So with that, we're going to get back to the video, and thank you for any support you're able to give to me. The next link below, and this is probably the most important one because it has the most resources to look to, and although Leo immediately dismisses these guys because of their stance on many other things, the Weston A. Price Foundation has a lot of good research behind them. They reference journals in nutrition, the medical journals. They have it all there in print that you can just simply look up the journals in your local library if you have them, or in a medical library, university. Sometimes the studies are online. So just dismissing them, even though they reference their work, is really ignorant in my opinion, and it's not taking into account that anyone can write an article and link to studies, which you have done. And yes, people have biases because they might have a point to prove, or they might have developed an opinion over time and they want to adhere to that. But what it comes down to is the facts, and the Weston A. Price Foundation has a lot of them because they're based in scientific research. They're not just making wild claims, they have very well thought out arguments. And you also point to some other resources to go look to learn more about how horrible the Weston A. Price Foundation is. And personally, I've looked at many of those authors before, and I'm familiar with them, such as Dr. Joel Fuhrman and the others. And you look in the forums or the blog sections of their websites, or you see their work in general, and I'm specifically thinking about one in particular who I'm not going to go into, but they display very aggressive behavior, have this sort of high and mighty mentality, and they don't really use good arguments for proving the point. That's more about, I'm right and you're wrong because I have an MD at the end of my name. It's really quite disturbing to see that kind of behavior from someone with an education, and should be coming from a non-biased point of view, but it's pretty clear that they have just as much, if not more, bias than people in the Weston A. Price Foundation, or people that agree with the Weston A. Price Foundation. So the link below is a great reference to studies going from 1939 all the way to 2008. Perhaps you didn't come across this one, Leo, because these are really good studies, many dozens of them, and they're all from journals. So with that being said, here's your evidence that is the other side of the soy story, which you have falsely thought that didn't exist. So please check that out. So with any topic in the health, nutrition field, specifically when it relates to practice of medicine, we're going to see issues on both sides fighting for their version of the truth. With the soy research, we see the hand of the soy industry that's involved in that. It's a massive industry headed by the likes of Daniel Archer-Midland and Monsanto, and then all the other companies that are out there, both GMO-based, non-organic, plus the organic ones. They're funding research that makes them look good. So if we take another example, for instance, like the vaccine industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they pump out research, deny and suppress the research to the contrary of what they're pushing, and they get a whole slew of both the public, the media, and the medical professionals on their side to really keep pushing this idea that this is healthy, this is saving the world, this is the right thing to do. Meanwhile, the side that's actually trying to save people and is compassionate and actually interested in true health, not just making a quick buck, that is the side that is right. Unless, of course, Leo, you think vaccines are right too. Maybe you're into that. Maybe you believe in chemotherapy and all these other mainstream medical therapies and ideas of improving health. If so, all the best to you. Let me know how that works out. My subscribers are smart enough not to fall for such ridiculous ideas, and I give you a lot of references for both studies that I didn't link to the Weston A. Price Foundation first, and then I gave you the one that is on the WAP website, which is perfectly legitimate because it is linking to other journal articles. It's not just stuff they're spouting off as random ideas. And so definitely consider this, and maybe you can allow comments on your blog so people can actually respond to you, and you'll actually see the overwhelming evidence that's out there instead of just posting your email address so people can just send you a little email with links. People want to see their opinions public. The next link below, just keep following that down in the drop-down menu box, is a BBC article, and again, this is more specific to females, but it's on the topic of fertility, that soy definitely should be avoided when you're wanting to conceive. To learn about all the specifics as to how that occurs, what's happening with the soy and interacting with your body, read the article. And, you know, this is just another sort of side to things, which apparently, according to the people that want to keep consuming the soy, doesn't exist. You know, we're going to keep throwing out these dismissive facts about, you know, these people that promote these things are not scientific, they're not doing the research, they're just pointing to these things, and they have some sort of agenda. And my only agenda is I want to help people be healthy, and I do see men becoming emasculated by society in general, not to mention their diet. It's coming at men from all sides, but also women. They really want to, in more ways, boost the progesterone in their body and keep most of the estrogen levels down, specifically the estrone and estradiol. And since soy can potentially be connected with that, we're not going to embark on some experiment on ourselves just because the industry that grows this, because it's such an easy plant to grow and puts nitrogen back in the soil, so they have farmers doing it in between their crops of corn and other big business crops that they grow. So really just start looking at the bigger picture of things and start questioning things, because for the minimal potential benefits that you could get from doing other lifestyle factors, you could be drinking something like almond milk. Even rice milk would be better. I personally would never recommend that, but that's going to be better than soy milk. Drink regular raw milk. Oh no, not the cholesterol in that. Don't want it clogging up your arteries, even though cholesterol is never connected with clogging your arteries, when the plaque is actually composed mostly of calcium oxidized cholesterol and omega-6 fatty acids from a diet high in omega-6s. If you actually understand the physiology of what occurs with cholesterol in the body, you don't have to have that fear. But yeah, if you don't want to drink raw milk, there's the almond milk. Even hemp milk is a great one. But consuming the equivalent to 3 to 5 estrogen pills in a glass of soy milk is not worth it, in my opinion, to use yourself as a human guinea pig. And yeah, I've got one more link below that I'm going to go to, and this is an article on Dr. MERCOLA'S site. A very good researcher, in my opinion, despite some of the blacklisting and, again, dismissive hand-waving of we're not even going to bother looking at his work because he's associated with Weston A. Price Foundation. But he's got an article which just basically links all the health problems associated with soy, and then each of those articles link to sources for them that are not just from the Weston A. Price Foundation, as Leo seems to think that anyone that has anything bad to say about soy, that's their only source for all their information. So there is evidence out there quite strongly that soy is not the best thing for us, so please consider that. And this topic is far from being conclusively, this is a safe and good thing to be consuming. We've only been consuming it for possibly 10,000 years at the most, and that's a blink of the eye in evolutionary terms when you consider some of our dietary habits for the past 2.5 million years, 20 million years, 60 million years, and we really had not had access to grains, beans, and a lot of these other high phytoestrogenic foods in our diet, because our diet was centered more on, in limited quantities, fruits, grasses, animal products, insects, and it's more of a primal paleo diet. So with that being said, check out those links below. Let me know your comments in the comment section below, and embrace life without limits.